It should have been just numbers and routine, a bland spreadsheet, a Friday night, and one exhausted accountant desperate to stay afloat. But the moment Salvatore Riena's velvet voice cut through the humming silence, I realized that missing a decimal could mean missing my last breath. Welcome to our channel. If this suspenseful romance grips your heart and keeps you guessing, subscribe now so you never miss a risky love story or a dangerous secret revealed. The office building was a tomb. Each click of the keyboard, a nail driven into my ordinary life. I'm Zelma Carter, and 3 months ago, I thought I'd been rescued by a job at Riena Enterprises. After my parents died, leaving my kid brother Danny and me stranded in the aftermath, every day felt like another round in the ring. Bills, grief, the suffocating quiet that followed loss. Danny was 7, and just surviving was enough for him. For me, surviving was a mathematical process. Never let the account go negative, never let the debts pile high enough they topple over us. When I first started as a junior accountant, I ignored the whispers about the Riena family. You had to if you wanted work in this city. But that Friday, with the moon sickly pale and the floor almost empty, I saw the truth spelled out in neat columns and errant decimals. Containers shipped to nowhere, payments sliding into black holes overseas, money bleeding out of the company like a bullet wound. I ignored the warning in my bones and started printing every single thread I could pull. Danny was home with Mrs. Vickers, our neighbor, probably eating microwave chicken nuggets and watching cartoons. I always texted him at this hour. Good night, buddy. Dream big. That night, my fingers hovered over my phone for a long moment. If I pushed send, would it be the last message he got from me? Interesting choice for Friday night entertainment. I spun so hard my chair nearly toppled. Salvatore Riena wasn't supposed to speak like that. Calm, teasing, dangerous. At 29, he shouldn't have looked so untouchable. But the suit, the jaws, the eyes that registered every move, I understood instantly why men feared him. And I realized why those whispers always dropped his name with reverence and caution.
Mr. Riena, I was finishing up the quarterly reports, I lied, voice trembling. My pulse thundered in my throat as he glanced up the papers trembling beside my printer. Salvatore moved closer, almost gliding, his gaze dissecting me. You print other people's mistakes on a Friday night, Miss Carter? He picked up a page, scanning it with surgical precision. I wanted to reach out and snatch it away, but fear rooted me. Or maybe you're compiling evidence. Stealing or whistleblowing, either way, I was dead. Please, I croaked. I have a little brother. He's just 7. He can't lose. His expression didn't change, but the tension in the air pulled taut like a violin string. He pressed the intercom. Vincent, escort Ms. Carter to my penthouse. Bring the files. 2 men appeared, all muscle and menace, but their grip when they guided me from my desk was almost gentle. The elevator ride was silent. Even the music seemed to know better than to speak. The city winked at me through the windows, daring me to run, knowing there was nowhere to go. Salvatore poured me a drink, settled across, and for a moment I glimpsed something fragile in his eyes. You work hard. My CFO praises you. But you noticed something nobody else did. Did I? Or had I just gotten unlucky? Is this how you fire people? I tried for humor. Sarcasm, a shield. Fire people? His lips twisted in a half smile. No, I think you're far too clever for that. The documents you printed, they show someone stealing. Millions. Someone high up. Someone who knows the games. A cold blade pressed against my spine. You think someone's robbing you? Not me? He leaned in. I know. And someone who killed your parents is hiding here too. My world buckled.
You want my help then? I whispered. No. His eyes never slid away. I want justice. for both of us. I gripped the whiskey glass until it shook. Danny's face, small, hopeful, floated through my memory. But here, now, vengeance and survival tangled in a dangerous knot. What do I have to do? His answer was a promise and a threat. Find the traitor. Make them pay. The city outside glittered. Opportunity? Catastrophe? Or fate? I spent the rest of that night floating between panic and resolve. Salvatore's penthouse had a view that dared me to believe in destiny. But all I wanted was certainty, a map that showed how Danny and I could claw free from this nightmare. Salvatore left me with the files, letting me comb through shredded bits of my father's last days with Reina Enterprises. Each bank statement, each shipment voucher was a puzzle piece, soaked in tragedy and greed. What gnawed at me most wasn't the numbers, but the realization. My father had taken these same risks. He kept his discoveries from my mother and me, hoping to finish the fight on his own terms. He failed. Would I? Salvatore reappeared as dawn broke, dressed with the same precision, but this time his jaw softer, his eyes weary. "You didn't sleep," he remarked. Not a question, but an observation. "Sleeping won't solve anything," I shot back. "Whoever did this, they're still here, aren't they?" He nodded, then shifted, pouring coffee, the universal truth offering. I glanced at his hands, surprised to see a faint scar, like a memory of violence barely hidden. "Why are you trusting me?" Because trust in the Mafia was rarer than honesty, and rarer still between women and men. You have no stake in their games. You're the only one who gains nothing from their survival. In the pale morning light, the tension between us grew palpable, a thread strung between desperate hope and vengeful necessity. I asked, if we find this person, if we bring them down, what happens next? His answer flickered in the quiet. Justice, for you, for your brother, and for my family. A knock interrupted. Vincent, always too silent. But this time, one detail caught my eye. The man's name, written on his phone, wasn't Vincent. It was Thaddeus. A mistake or a lie. A warning my instincts screamed to heed. Before I could confront him, Salvatore's phone buzzed, urgent. His voice suddenly clipped. "Our traitor may be closer than you think."
And for the first time, I understood the danger in every whisper, every glance. The stakes weren't just about money or revenge. They were about survival. And the deepest secrets both of our families had tried and failed to bury. Would you risk everything for truth and for the chance at justice? Leave your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you crave more danger, romance, and redemption. The name discrepancy haunted me. Vincent, who was actually Thaddeus, or Thaddeus posing as Vincent. In Salvatore's world, names weren't accidents. They were shields or weapons. I filed the information away, my accountant's brain cataloging every anomaly like a virus in the system. Salvatore's urgency pulled me from my thoughts. "We have a problem," he said, his phone still pressed to his ear. "My shipment from Rotterdam, intercepted by the feds. Someone tipped them off." "How does that connect to the embezzlement?" I asked, already scanning the files for Rotterdam transactions. "It doesn't, unless our thief is also selling information." His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath the surface. "Which means they're not just stealing money, they're dismantling my entire operation." I found the Rotterdam entries within minutes. 3 shipments, all flagged with the same accounting code my father had circled in red ink 12 years ago. The pattern was there, hidden in plain sight, like a ghost leaving breadcrumbs for someone smart enough to follow. "These codes," I said, pointing, "they're authorization signatures. Whoever approved these transactions has executive clearance." Salvatore leaned over my shoulder, close enough that I caught his scent, something expensive and dangerous, like smoke and cedar. "That narrows it to 6 people. My CFO, COO,
and 4 senior vice presidents. One of them killed my parents. One of them, he confirmed, has been playing me for over a decade. The weight of that realization settled between us. 2 people bound by murder and mathematics, hunting a ghost who'd already proven they'd kill to stay hidden. Salvatore made a decision quickly. You're moving into the estate, you and your brother.
Excuse me? I nearly knocked over my cold coffee. If they know you're digging, you're a target. Danny's a target. I can protect you both at the compound, but not in whatever apartment you're barely affording. The truth stung because he was right. Our place was a 2-bedroom with locks that wouldn't stop a determined teenager, let alone a professional killer. Danny can't know, I said firmly. He's already terrified. If he thinks we're in danger, he'll think you got promoted. Private school, security, the works. Salvatore's expression softened fractionally. I have nephews his age. He'll be safe, Zelma. That's not negotiable. The way he said my name, not Ms. Carter, but Zelma, shifted something in the air between us. Like we'd crossed an invisible line from employer-employee into something far more complicated. By noon, Danny and I were packing. Mrs. Vickers clucked about how fast things were moving, but the generous moving bonus Salvatore's people handed her bought her silence and enthusiasm. Danny bounced around our apartment, thrilled about the pool and game room Salvatore had mentioned. Is your boss really rich? Danny asked, stuffing his favorite dinosaur into a backpack. Really rich, I confirmed, trying not to think about where that money came from. Cool. Can I call him Mr. Sal? Salvatore is hard to say. I bit back a laugh. Let's ask him first, buddy. The Rena estate was something from a different universe. Sprawling grounds, armed security disguised as gardeners, and a main house that belonged in an architecture magazine. Salvatore met us at the door, and I watched something unexpected happen. He crouched to Danny's level. You must be Danny. I'm Salvatore, but you can call me Sal if you want. Danny's eyes went wide. You have a fountain. Is that a treehouse? Built it for my nephews. You're welcome to use it. Salvatore stood, meeting my gaze over Danny's head. The message was clear. Your brother is safe here. For the first time in 6 months, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not quite relief, but close.
That night, after Danny crashed from excitement, Salvatore and I returned to the files. We worked in his study, a room that smelled like leather and old books, methodically cross-referencing every transaction with personnel records. Your father was careful, Salvatore said, studying one of the highlighted pages. He documented everything, but he never named names. He was protecting us, I realized. If he'd written it down, they might have come after my mother and me immediately. Smart man. Brave, too. There was respect in Salvatore's voice. Not many people would have stood up to my organization. Is that what you call it? An organization? I couldn't help the edge. His dark eyes met mine. I call it many things, Zelma. Family, legacy, empire. But yes, it's also a criminal enterprise. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. The honesty surprised me. Why tell me? Because you deserve the truth. And because if we're going to work together, you need to understand what you're fighting for and against. The space between us felt charged, dangerous. I should have been afraid, should have grabbed Danny and run. But instead, I leaned forward, studying the man who held our lives in his scarred hands. Tell me about the person who did this. Who are they? Salvatore's expression turned glacial, patient, ruthless. They've been stealing for 12 years without detection. They killed your father and made it look like an accident. And they're still here, walking my halls, eating at my table. A chill ran down my spine. Tomorrow, he continued, we start interviewing the suspects. You'll watch, listen, and tell me what the numbers say. Liars always leave traces. And when we find them, his smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Then, Zelma Carter, we make them pay for every life they've destroyed. The first interview was with Bernard Castellano, the CFO, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. He sat across from Salvatore in the main office, perfectly composed, while I watched from an adjacent room through one-way glass.
Bernard's been with me for 15 years, Salvatore had explained earlier. Brilliant with numbers, but he's always hungry for more. As the interview progressed, disguised as a routine financial review, I studied every transaction Bernard had authorized. His signatures appeared on 60% of the suspicious shipments, but something felt wrong. The pattern was too obvious, too sloppy for someone who'd evaded detection for 12 years. When Bernard left, I joined Salvatore. "He's not your thief," I said immediately. Salvatore raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The signatures are authentic, but the coding errors are deliberate. Someone's framing him, using his authorization after the fact. I pulled up the metadata. See these timestamps? The codes were added 3 to 5 days after Bernard signed off. He never saw these entries." "So he's a patsy." Salvatore's expression turned calculating, "which means our real thief has access to the system after approvals are finalized." "That's a much smaller pool," I said, pulse quickening. "IT administrators, maybe 2 or 3 senior executives with override access." The next interview was with Lucia Moretti, the COO, a woman who'd clawed her way up from the docks to the boardroom. She was sharp, suspicious, and clearly resented being questioned. "I've given 20 years to this family," Lucia said coldly. "If you're suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Salvatore interrupted smoothly. "I'm conducting due diligence." But I saw it immediately. Lucia's body language shifted when Salvatore mentioned Rotterdam. A micro-expression, barely a flutter, but unmistakable. Fear. After she left, I turned to Salvatore. "She knows something." "You're certain?" "I'm certain she's terrified. Whether she's guilty or just aware of who is." I trailed off. Salvatore made a call. Within minutes, his head of security, a mountain of a man named Enzo, appeared.
"Put surveillance on Lucia," Salvatore ordered. "Every call, every meeting. If she sneezes, I want to know about it." Enzo nodded and vanished. The next 3 days blurred together. Interviews, data analysis, and stolen moments where Salvatore and I worked side by side, our partnership deepening into something I couldn't name. He was patient with Danny, teaching him chess in the evenings. He asked about my parents, really listening when I shared memories. And late at night, when it was just us and the files, he'd talk about his own father, a man who'd built an empire on blood and ambition. "Do you ever wish you'd chosen differently?" I asked one night. Salvatore considered the question. "Every day. But wishing doesn't change the past. Only the future can be different." "Is that why you want justice for my father? To change your future?" His gaze held mine. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. "Enzo. Enzo, just met with someone. Antonio Caruso, your head of IT." Everything clicked into place. Antonio, quiet, unassuming Antonio, who'd been with the company for 13 years, who had access to every system, every override code, who could alter records without leaving obvious traces. "Bring them both in," Salvatore said, his voice deadly calm. But when Enzo arrived at Lucia's location, he found only Antonio and Lucia's body, a single bullet through her heart. The traitor was cleaning house. Lucia's death changed everything. The game had shifted from financial investigation to survival, and Antonio Caruso had vanished like smoke. Salvatore's entire operation went on lockdown. No one in, no one out. The estate became a fortress, and armed men stationed at every entrance.
And Danny's playful questions about why there were so many security guards made my heart ache with lies I had to tell.
"It's just a precaution, buddy," I said, tucking him into bed in our new room, a suite larger than our entire apartment. "Mr. Sal has important business. Is someone trying to hurt him?" Danny's eyes were too knowing for 7. I smoothed his hair back. "No one's going to hurt anyone, I promise." But promises in this world were as fragile as paper in a storm. Downstairs, Salvatore's war room hummed with tension. Enzo had pulled Antonio's entire digital footprint, bank accounts, travel records, communications. What we found was a masterclass in deception. "He's been funneling money to offshore accounts for 13 years, I said, tracing the patterns on the screen. "But he's not keeping it. It's moving through shell companies, then disappearing." "Disappearing where?" Salvatore demanded. I pulled up the final destination, a series of accounts registered in Prague under a corporate entity called Moretti Holdings. Salvatore's face went pale. Moretti, Lucia's family name. They were working together, Enzo concluded, but Antonio killed her. Why? I studied the timeline. Because we were getting close. Lucia knew she'd crack under pressure, so Antonio eliminated the liability. Or, Salvatore said slowly, someone above Antonio gave the order. Someone with enough power to order hits, enough access to manipulate IT records, and enough patience to run this operation for over a decade. The room fell silent. "There's a 6th person," I breathed. "Someone with enough power to order hits, enough access to manipulate IT records, and enough patience to run this operation for over a decade." Salvatore's jaw clenched. My inner circle. The people I trust most. We spent the next 18 hours dissecting every member of Salvatore's executive team, every family associate, every person with sufficient clearance. The list narrowed to one name that made my blood run cold. Giovanni Riina, Salvatore's uncle, his father's brother, the man who'd supposedly retired 5 years ago to enjoy his golden years. "No," Salvatore said flatly. "Giovanni raised me after my father died. He taught me everything." "Look at the evidence," I pressed, laying out the connections. "Giovanni retired right when the theft amounts increased. He has override access to every system. It was built in when the company was founded. And Antonio? He was Giovanni's recommendation 13 years ago. Zelma, your uncle, is the traitor, Salvatore." The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. For the first time since I'd met him, Salvatore looked broken. Not angry, not calculating, just devastated. "He's family," Salvatore whispered. "So were my parents," I replied gently, "and he killed them." The pain in Salvatore's eyes was unbearable. He stood abruptly, walking to the window, his shoulders rigid. I wanted to comfort him, to bridge the distance, but this was his grief to process. Finally, he turned back. "We need proof, solid, undeniable proof before I move against him." "Then let's get it." We crafted a trap. I would accidentally send an email to the wrong address, one of Giovanni's known accounts, mentioning that we'd traced the Rotterdam shipments to a specific location in Prague. If Giovanni was our thief, he'd have to act. Either he'd run, or he'd send Antonio to eliminate the evidence. "If I'm wrong," Salvatore said as I hovered over the send button, "I'll have betrayed my uncle's trust for nothing. And if you're right, we'll finally have justice." I hit send. For 2 days, nothing happened. Danny went to his new school, Salvatore attended meetings with his usual precision, and I continued analyzing financial records. But beneath the surface, we were coiled springs waiting to snap. On the 3rd day, Enzo burst into the study.
Giovanni just booked a flight to Prague, leaves tonight. Salvatore's expression hardened into something terrifying. And Antonio? En route to the docks, Warehouse 7, where your father used to keep the sensitive shipments. The same warehouse where my father had worked 12 years ago. Salvatore stood, every inch a Mafia boss who'd earned his reputation. Enzo, take 12 men to the warehouse. I want Antonio alive. Zelma, you're coming with me to confront Giovanni. Salvatore! You deserve to face him, to hear the truth from his own mouth. His dark eyes burned with purpose. This ends tonight. Giovanni's estate was a monument to old money and older sins. Marble columns, manicured gardens, and enough security to guard a small nation. But when Salvatore's convoy pulled up, the guards stepped aside. Family privilege, even for a confrontation. We found Giovanni in his study, packing files into a leather briefcase. He looked up as we entered, and for a moment, his mask slipped. Fear, guilt, resignation. Giovanni said, his voice carefully neutral. Salvatore, this is unexpected. Is it? Salvatore closed the door behind us, locking it with a soft click. You're running, Giovanni. Why? I'm taking a vacation. Prague is lovely this time of year. I stepped forward, placing the evidence on his desk. 12 years of theft, coded transactions, and Antonio's communications linking everything back to Moretti Holdings. We know, I said simply. We know everything. Giovanni's facade crumbled. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. How long have you suspected? He asked quietly. Not long enough, Salvatore replied. Why, Giovanni? You had everything. Respect, wealth, family. Everything? Giovanni laughed bitterly. I was your father's shadow, his errand boy. He built this empire, and when he died, it went to you, a boy of 19 who hadn't earned anything. So you stole from me, from our family. I took what should have been mine. Giovanni's eyes hardened, and when that accountant, Carter, discovered the pattern, I did what was necessary to protect my interests. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. You killed my father? Antonio killed your father. On my orders, yes. But the man wouldn't stop digging. He gave me no choice. Rage consumed me. He had a family, a wife, a daughter, a son he'd never meet. Collateral damage. Giovanni's tone was dismissive, and something inside me snapped. I lunged, but Salvatore caught me, holding me back even as I screamed every ounce of fury and grief. Zelma, not like this. Giovanni watched with detached interest. You've developed a soft spot for the help, nephew. How sentimental. Salvatore's grip on me loosened. He stepped towards his uncle, and the temperature in the room dropped.
You're right about one thing, Salvatore said softly. I was 19 and unproven, but I learned from the best. I learned how to build, how to protect, and how to destroy those who betray me. You won't kill me, Giovanni said confidently. I'm family, blood. Salvatore pulled out his phone, playing a recording, Antonio's confession, secured by Enzo at the warehouse. Every murder, every theft, every order that came directly from Giovanni Reina. Blood doesn't buy mercy, Salvatore said. It just makes the betrayal worse. Giovanni's face, confidence evaporated. Salvatore, please! I'm your uncle. I raised you. You raised me to value loyalty and honor. Then you spat on both. Salvatore's voice was ice. The families will hear this recording. They'll know you stole from me, killed civilians, and endangered our entire operation. You'll be exiled, Giovanni. No allies, no protection, no legacy. Just a traitor's death, slow and forgotten. Giovanni's face went gray. Salvatore turned to me. "It's your choice, Selma. The legal system or our justice." I thought of my father, of my mother crying over his casket, of Danny's nightmares. The accountant in me wanted law and order, but the daughter in me wanted blood. "Both," I said finally. "Turn him over to the feds with the evidence. Let him rot in prison knowing he destroyed everything for greed. That's justice." Salvatore nodded slowly, then made a call. Within minutes, federal agents, ones he had on payroll, I realized, swarmed the estate. As they hauled Giovanni away, he locked eyes with me. "You'll regret this, girl. This world will eat you alive." "Maybe, but at least I'll sleep at night." The weeks following Giovanni's arrest blurred together like watercolors in rain. Federal investigators swarmed Riena Enterprises, but Salvatore had been smart. Every legitimate business remained clean, every illegal operation carefully compartmentalized. Giovanni would face charges for murder, embezzlement, and conspiracy, but the empire Salvatore had built would survive. I should have felt victorious. My father's killer was behind bars, facing justice after 12 years. Danny was thriving in his new school, making friends, sleeping through the night without nightmares. We were safe, financially secure, and finally free from the debts that had haunted us. So why did I feel so hollow? "You've been staring at that spreadsheet for 20 minutes without moving," Salvatore observed, appearing in the doorway of what had become my office at the estate. I blinked, realizing he was right. "Just thinking." "About?" He moved closer, and I caught that familiar scent, cedar and smoke and danger. "About what happens now." I met his gaze. "Giovanni's arrested, the company's stable, and Danny and I, we don't really need to be here anymore." Something flickered in Salvatore's expression, too quick to name. "You want to leave?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I don't know what I want." The truth was more complicated. Over the past month, this estate had become home. Salvatore had become someone I trusted, someone I'd started to care about in ways that terrified me. But I was still an accountant who'd stumbled into a mafia boss's world, and fairy tales don't work like this.
"Stay," Salvatore said quietly. "As what? Your employee? Your—" I couldn't finish the sentence. He closed the distance between us, and my heart hammered against my ribs. "As whatever you want to be, Zelma. I'm not good at this. At feelings, at words that aren't orders or negotiations, but you've become essential to me. You and Danny both." "Salvatore," he continued, "I know what I am. I know the world I live in, the things I've done. I'm not asking you to love a saint. I'm asking you to consider staying with a man who's trying to be better because you make him want to be." The vulnerability in his voice undid me. I reached up, touching his scarred hand. "I'm scared." "So am I." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "But I've faced worse odds." Before I could overthink it, I kissed him. It was soft, tentative, a question more than an answer. He responded carefully, like I was something precious that might break. When we pulled apart, I whispered, "I'll stay. For now." His smile was rare and beautiful. For now is enough. But peace, I was learning, was a luxury in Salvatore's world. 3 weeks later, Danny came home from school pale and shaking. I found him in his room, refusing to talk, his backpack discarded by the door. Inside, I found a note scrawled in crude handwriting. "Traitors' families don't deserve happiness." My blood turned to ice. Salvatore's reaction was immediate and terrifying. Within an hour, the entire estate was on high alert. Danny's school was swarming with Salvatore's security, and every family associate was being questioned. "It's Giovanni's people," Enzo reported. "Loyalists who think you betrayed the family by turning him over to the feds." "How many?" Salvatore's voice was deadly calm. "At least a dozen, led by Metello Corsini, Giovanni's oldest friend." I knew that name from the files.
Matteo had been at Giovanni's side for 40 years, a relic from the old guard who believed in blood oaths and violent retribution. They're not going to stop with threats, I said, holding Danny close. They want revenge.
Salvatore crouched before Danny, meeting his eyes. Listen to me, kid. No one is going to hurt you, not while I'm breathing. Understand? Danny nodded, trusting in a way that made my chest ache. Salvatore stood, his expression transforming into something primal. Enzo, call a meeting. Every family head, every underboss. Tonight. Salvatore, what are you planning? I asked. Ending this. He kissed my forehead, gentle, despite the violence brewing beneath, once and for all. The meeting was held at a neutral location, an old church that had hosted Mafia councils for generations. I watched from a hidden alcove as Salvatore addressed the gathered men, his presence commanding respect and fear in equal measure. Giovanni Reina betrayed our code. He stole, he murdered civilians, and he endangered all our operations. I showed mercy by allowing him to face legal justice rather than our own. But his loyalists refused to accept this outcome, and they've threatened my family. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I am not my uncle, Salvatore continued, his voice cutting through the noise. I will not tolerate betrayal, and I will not negotiate with those who threaten children. Matteo Corsini and his associates have 72 hours to leave the city. If they refuse, they will face the consequences. An older man stood, Don Vincenzo, the most powerful of the family heads. And we harbor them. Salvatore's smile was sharp. Then you'll join them in exile, or worse. The threat hung in the air, undeniable. Don Vincenzo studied Salvatore for a long moment, then nodded. You've proven yourself, Reina. The old ways are dead. We'll support your decision. One by one, the other heads agreed. Matteo and his loyalists were excommunicated, cut off from every resource and protection the families provided. Within 48 hours, they were gone, fled to Europe or South America, their power shattered. Danny's nightmares returned briefly, but with therapy and Salvatore's patient presence, they faded. Life at the estate settled into a new rhythm. School runs, family dinners, and stolen moments with Salvatore when the world quieted down. One evening, as we sat on the terrace watching the sunset, Salvatore took my hand.
I have something for you, he said, pulling out a small box. My heart stuttered. Salvatore, it's not what you think. He opened it to reveal a key. This estate is yours now, legally, officially. Whatever happens to me, you and Danny are protected. Tears pricked my eyes. Why? Because you gave me something I thought I'd lost. Hope for a different future. Because Danny deserves security. And because... He hesitated, then continued softly. Because I love you, Zelma Carter. And I want you to choose this life knowing you're free to leave any time. I took the key, then set it aside to cup his face. I choose you, not the estate, not the security. You. His kiss was answer and promise, sealing a future neither of us had expected, but both of us desperately wanted. 6 months transformed everything. Danny turned 8, thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. Confident, happy, loved by Salvatore's nephews and the extended family that had adopted us. I'd been officially named CFO of Rihanna Enterprises' legitimate holdings, finally using my accounting degree for something meaningful. And Salvatore, he was trying, really trying, to separate the legal businesses from the criminal ones, to build something sustainable for the next generation. We weren't naive. The Mafia didn't just disappear because you wanted it to. But Salvatore was methodical, strategic, slowly transitioning power and resources toward legitimate ventures while maintaining enough of the old operations to keep his position secure. You're playing a dangerous game, I told him one night as we reviewed the quarterly reports.
I've been playing dangerous games my entire life, he replied, pulling me close. But this time, I have a reason to win.
The peaceful months made me complacent. I should have known better. It started with a phone call. Enzo, his voice tight with urgency. "We have a problem. Antonio escaped during a prisoner transfer." My blood ran cold. "How?" "Inside help. Someone at the prison. He's in the wind and he's got nothing to lose." Salvatore went into lockdown mode immediately. Danny was pulled from school. The estate became a fortress again, and every security measure was tripled. "He's coming for me," I said, the certainty settling in my bones. "I'm the one who exposed him, the one who ruined his life." "Then he'll have to go through me," Salvatore replied, his voice deadly. For 3 days, we waited. Antonio didn't attack the estate. He was smarter than that. Instead, he went after something more valuable: information. He hacked into the company's servers, downloading every file that detailed Salvatore's remaining illegal operations. Then he sent a simple message: "Meet me at Warehouse 7, alone, or I send everything to the FBI." The same warehouse where my father had died. "It's a trap," Enzo said flatly. "Obviously," Salvatore replied. "But he has evidence that could dismantle everything. I have to go." "Not alone," I insisted. "That's what he wants, you isolated and vulnerable." Salvatore turned to me, his expression torn between protection and pragmatism. "If I bring security, he'll send those files immediately. But if I go alone, he'll kill me," my voice cracked, "just like he killed my father." The parallel wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "There's another option," I said slowly. "Let me go." "Absolutely not," Salvatore interrupted. "Listen, Antonio wants revenge on me as much as you, but I'm not a threat to him physically. If I go, offer him a deal. Money, safe passage, whatever he wants, he might take it." "And if he doesn't?" Salvatore demanded. "Then you'll be there, backup ready, and we'll end this." I met his gaze steadily. "Trust me." The plan was simple, but terrifying. I would enter the warehouse wired, with Salvatore and his team positioned around the perimeter. Antonio would get his confrontation, but not on his terms.
As I approached Warehouse 7, memories flooded back. My father walking these same steps 12 years ago, unaware he'd never leave. I pushed the fear down, focusing on the mission. Antonio was waiting inside, looking haggard and desperate. The charming IT specialist was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. "Zelma Carter," he said, his voice bitter. "The accountant who destroyed everything." "You destroyed yourself, Antonio. You and Giovanni made choices that led here." "Choices?" He laughed harshly. "I was following orders, trying to survive in a world that grinds people like me into dust. Your father understood that, before Giovanni had me kill him." The casual admission made rage boil in my veins. My father was a good man. "Your father was naive. He thought honor mattered, that doing the right thing would protect his family." Antonio stepped closer. "Look how that worked out." "My father protected his family by teaching me to be smart, to be strong, and to never back down from the truth. That's why I'm still here, and Giovanni's rotting in a cell." Antonio's expression twisted with rage. "You think you've won? You've just treated one cage for another. You're Salvatore Rina's pet, playing house in his mansion, while he continues the same corruption your father died fighting against." The accusation stung, because part of it was true. I'd made compromises, accepted realities I'd once found unconscionable. But I'd also found love, built a family, and created a future for Danny that my parents would have wanted. I made my choice. You made yours. So what now, Antonio? You kill me and prove you're exactly the monster everyone says you are, or you take the deal I'm offering and disappear. What deal? His eyes narrowed with suspicion. $5 million, wired to any account you want, a new identity, transportation to anywhere in the world, and in exchange, you delete those files and disappear forever. Antonio laughed, the sound echoing in the cavernous warehouse. 5 million? Giovanni and I stole 10 times that amount. You think money matters to me now? Then what do you want? I demanded. Justice. He pulled a gun from his jacket, and my heart stopped. Giovanni's in prison, but Salvatore gets to keep his empire? Gets to play the hero while his hands are just as bloody? No. I want him to suffer the way I've suffered, and the best way to hurt Salvatore Rina, he aimed the gun at my chest, is to take away the woman he loves. Time slowed. I saw Antonio's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the cold calculation in his eyes. This wasn't about money or escape. It was about inflicting maximum pain before he died. The gunshot was deafening. But I wasn't hit. Antonio staggered, a red bloom spreading across his shoulder. Behind him, Salvatore emerged from the shadows, his own weapon raised. "Drop it," Salvatore commanded, his voice arctic.
Antonio spun, firing wildly. Salvatore moved with lethal precision, returning fire. The second shot hit Antonio in the chest, and he crumpled to the concrete floor. I ran to Salvatore, who caught me, his hands frantically checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did he—" "I'm fine," I gasped. "You saved me." Enzo and his team flooded the warehouse, securing the perimeter. Salvatore kept me pressed against him, his heartbeat thundering against my ear. Antonio gurgled, blood frothing at his lips. Salvatore approached him, crouching beside the dying man. "The files," Salvatore said coldly. "Where are they?" Antonio smiled, red staining his teeth. "Gone. Uploaded to the cloud, set to send to every federal agency in 72 hours. Unless I input the cancel code, which I won't be doing now, will I?" My stomach dropped. Salvatore's expression didn't change. "Enzo, get the tech team. Find those files." But even as he spoke, I saw the resignation in his eyes. Antonio had won his revenge after all. If those files went public, Salvatore's entire operation would collapse. Prison or worse. "There might be another way," I said quickly, my accountant's brain working through possibilities. "If the files are in the cloud, they need a server, a hosting platform. We find the platform, we can get an injunction, shut it down before the timer expires." Salvatore stared at me. "That's actually brilliant." "I married an accountant for a reason," I replied, and despite everything, he almost smiled. Antonio's laugh turned into a wet cough. "Too late. It's automated, encrypted. You'll never find it in time. Then you'll die knowing your revenge failed, because Zelma will find it. She found your embezzlement scheme, she found Giovanni's operation, and she'll find your final play. You underestimated her. That's why you lost." Antonio's eyes widened with realization, then glazed over. He was gone. The next 72 hours were the most intense of my life. I worked with Salvatore's tech team, tracing Antonio's digital footprint through layers of encryption and proxy servers. We found the hosting platform, a small company in Estonia, and Salvatore used every connection, every favor, every ounce of pressure to get an emergency court order. With 6 hours remaining on Antonio's timer, we shut down the server. The files never sent. When the confirmation came through, I collapsed into Salvatore's arms, exhaustion and relief overwhelming me. "It's over," he murmured into my hair. "It's really over." But was it? The question lingered as we returned to the estate, as Danny ran to greet us, as life slowly returned to its new normal. 2 weeks later, Salvatore called a family meeting. Every head, every associate, gathered at the estate. I stood beside him, Danny holding my hand, as he made his announcement. "I'm retiring from active leadership," Salvatore declared. "The legitimate businesses will continue under professional management. The old operations—" He paused, meeting the eyes of men who'd served his family for decades. "They end now. Anyone who wants out, I'll provide resources to transition. Anyone who stays in the life does so independently." Shock rippled through the crowd. Don Vincenzo stood slowly. "You're walking away?" The old Don's voice was incredulous. "I'm choosing a different future for my family, for the woman I love and the boy I'm going to raise as my own. This life took my father, nearly took Zelma and Danny, and I won't sacrifice them for an empire built on blood." The silence stretched impossibly long. Then Don Vincenzo did something unexpected. He smiled. "Your father would be proud, not of the choice, but of the courage to make it. Go, Rena. Live well." One by one, the others nodded their acceptance. Salvatore had earned the right to leave. 6 months later, we stood on a beach in the Caribbean, watching Danny build sandcastles with Salvatore's nephews. The estate had been sold, the legitimate businesses restructured under independent management. We'd kept enough money to live comfortably, very comfortably, and Salvatore had established trusts for every family that had depended on his organization.
"Any regrets?" I asked, lacing my fingers through his. Salvatore pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Not one. You gave me something more valuable than power, Zelma. You gave me a life worth living." Danny ran over, soaking wet and grinning. "Dad, come see the castle I built." The word Dad still made Salvatore's eyes shine. He'd formally adopted Danny last month, and the ceremony had been more emotional than our small wedding. "Lead the way, kid," Salvatore said, letting Danny drag him toward the water. I watched them go, these two people who'd become my entire world. My father would never see this. Danny growing up safe and loved, me finding happiness despite the tragedy. But somehow, I felt his presence in the ocean breeze, in the warmth of the sun, in the justice we'd finally achieved. Giovanni was serving life without parole. Antonio was dead. The empire that had destroyed my parents was dismantled, and in its place, we'd built something new. A family forged in fire, tempered by loss, and bound by a love strong enough to survive anything. "Hey, beautiful," Salvatore called out. "You going to join us or just stand there looking philosophical?" I laughed, kicking off my sandals and running toward them, toward my future, toward the life my father's courage and sacrifice had made possible. Justice had come, but more importantly, so had love, healing, and hope. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. Living well, loving fiercely, and refusing to let tragedy define us. The Mafia boss and the accountant. It shouldn't have worked. But against every odd, despite every obstacle, we'd found our happy ending, and I'd never let it go. Thank you so much for joining us on Zelma and Salvatore's journey from suspicion to justice, and from vengeance to love. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Zelma's position? We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you in the next story.